The drama begins when one of Korea's most favorite spokesmen alighted from his car. The ring on his ring finger hinted that he was married, yet as he entered the hall, nearly every lady in the room seemed drawn to him, vying for his attention because he was indeed handsome and great in the suit he wore. As he stood still without giving anyone attention, a beautiful lady named Hee-ju came from behind and gripped his arm. Everyone wondered if she was his wife. It turned out our favorite character's name was Paik Sa-eon, a government spokesperson. He whispered to her not to be nervous as the people were looking at him and not her. And even though it's crystal clear they were curious about her, he warned her in a serious tone that there shouldn't be any misunderstandings, interest, or rumors about their relationship that night. Everyone watched as they both walked up the stairs arm in arm. Meanwhile, a day before this event, Se-eon, as the spokesperson for the presidential office, addressed the journalists about the current situation of the Argan armed group, demanding the immediate withdrawal of South Korean troops and payment of a ransom with the warning that they would kill the hostages if their demands were not met. The government, however, insisted that there wouldn't be a negotiation with the kidnappers regarding the ransom as they consider their acts inhumane crimes that cannot be tolerated and will never compromise. In response to this, the government would rather mobilize all national resources to rescue their citizens, including cooperation with international organizations, and use the opportunity to address recent attacks on third-country commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. In the middle of his speech, he switched off the microphone, reporting that at 5:02 p.m. that day, a temporary media control would be implemented under government authority. One of the journalists, HBC Jang Hyuk-jin, questioned this, stating that the foreign media were already reporting the event, and if the Korean media stayed silent, sensational fake news and unreliable personal broadcasts would take over. Se-eon, however, agreed to his opinion, and reminded them that since the leading media outlets' reporters were all present there, if they didn't mislead public opinion, the citizens wouldn't believe what fake news says. For the first time, Se-eon, who's always adhered to the saying, "Don't be gentle with the government," which had brought him this far, seemed scared. Se-eon admitted that he was indeed terrified, but he knew it wasn't just him. He then asked that all the journalists come together as one and pray for the safe return of their citizens, while the government ensures that no single life is lost. Up next, Se-eon's mum met with Hee-ju and her mum. Se-eon's mum, however, asked Hee-ju to quit her job, knowing that the election camp would start in a month's time and she would have to support Se-eon. Her mum was the one who responded, assuring her she was going to quit anyway. Se-eon's mum insisted in a haughty tone that she shouldn't be working in the first place to avoid her face and name being exposed. Just then, we realized that the lady hadn't spoken a word yet. Somehow, it seemed she was meant to be silent and her mouth shut. Se-eon's mum stood up to leave in a rude manner, which got on Hee-ju's mum's nerves, and she wished she could put her in her place one day. After she left, Hee-ju's mum lashed out at Hee-ju, blaming her for not doing a good job even after stealing someone else's man, and yet couldn't win his heart. She reminded her of being Chungwoon Daily News chairman's second daughter and the future president's daughter-in-law, but still, she wouldn't utter a word. While Hee-ju was returning home in her car, the unexpected happened. She completely lost control of her car and went off-route. No matter how she tried to control the car, it moved on its own on the highway at an incredible speed that almost hit other cars. She thought an accident had occurred, but when she raised her head, she was safe. She tried to open the door, but all her attempts failed. Then she realized her car's engine and locks had been manipulated. In the office, Se-eon's phone kept ringing, but he wouldn't pick it up, and his battery was almost dead. To Hee-ju, a vehicle almost blinded her eyes with its bright light, and she thought it would hit her. In the middle of that, a man in black revealed himself, causing a real terrifying feeling in her as he glanced at her in a funny way. He was holding a phone, and he moved closer to her car with every step he took. He opened the car lock and entered. Meanwhile, Se-eon in his office still struggled with analyzing the recent news and timelines about the earlier incident, and wouldn't pick his calls no matter how many times they rang. But this time when the phone rang, it was a strange number from abroad, and he was tempted to pick it up. The caller, however, was reluctant to speak, and when he finally did, he threatened to kill his wife. Before he could respond, his phone went off, and he charged it immediately. The phone came up again, and he dialed his mum's number. When she picked up, he asked if she saw Hee-ju that day, and when they parted ways. His mum, however, informed him that Hee-ju was with his mother-in-law, Instantly, he put a call through to her and asked about Heju, to which she responded that she brought her home and would send her off after dinner. He immediately asked one of his journalists to trace the number. The number called again, and he picked up, asking if his wife was dead already, since the caller had threatened to kill her. He made it clear that no one knew who his wife was and that he was too busy that day for prank calls like that. The caller claimed he had a knife to his wife's throat and would kill her. Surprisingly, Saeyeon asked him to kill her instead of just talking about it. Funny enough, the caller asked for a ransom, asking how much he was willing to pay for it. In response, Saeyeon told him there would be no ransom and warned him never to call him again. The man in black became furious and really did put a knife to her throat. He also strangled her neck with a rope just to show her he wasn't joking, as Saeyeon assumed. All this while, the car moved on its own. The mysterious man called Saeyeon again, but he ignored his calls. In annoyance, he picked up a knife and began prickling Heju's seat aggressively until the knife made a slight cut on her neck. He then informed her that the phone he used could only call Saeyeon, and the voice modulation was also automatic. It also used VPN and couldn't be tracked for 10 minutes. He confessed he prepped her car in advance too, and that's why it moved on its own. While he ranted about Saeyeon not picking his calls, someone mistakenly picked it up and said he would put Saeyeon on call. Saeyeon was furious, and he asked him to just kill his wife, as he said, and only call him for her corpse. He then hung up. What kind of man doesn't care when his wife is about to get killed? The strange man almost went crazy hearing him say that. Heju's eyes, on the other hand, were filled with tears already, as the words Saeyeon spoke rang in her head. Just then, one of the journalists came to inform Saeyeon that the Argon armed group requested his presence, and he left immediately without picking his calls from the strange man. It was raining, and the car kept moving nonstop. Heju, however, took control of the car and intentionally drove it in an accident, making the mysterious man lose consciousness immediately. The car hit the ground while she held onto the steering. At the same time, it was announced that the negotiations ended successfully, and the Argon armed group agreed to release all Korean hostages. Spokesperson Saeyeon also released a speech expressing gratitude to everyone involved for their cooperation, including the Argon government. Heju returned home and stared at her stressed face in the mirror. She sustained some minor injuries, and her eyes almost bulged out from crying. She cleaned herself up and did some cooking. Saeyeon drove home crazily, only to find out that his so-called wife was home cooking. He heaved a sigh of relief and sat down. He talked about the ridiculous call he received at work that she would be killed, but she didn't give any response. Just then, the journalist reported that he couldn't trace the number and could only track it in real time if he called again, and the call must last at least 10 minutes. Saeyeon then realized that the timing for the call was just to shake him up during a national emergency. He requested that his wife be under protection without anyone knowing she was his wife. Next, he informed Heju that there would be an event at the British Embassy the next day at 6 p.m., and so he would send someone to pick her up at 5 p.m. Heju, on hearing this, seemed surprised because she never goes out with him. Seeing that expression on her face, he revealed that the ambassador's wife is deaf, so they needed a sign language interpreter. All this while, Heju didn't utter a single word. She just watched him as he spilled every word without minding her feelings. A flashback revealed the marriage between Heju and Saeyeon that happened 3 years ago. Heju was beautifully dressed in her wedding gown and would have won an award for the most beautiful bride for that year if there was anything like that. But when Saeyeon came, instead of complimenting her, he asked her to take off the dress as it didn't belong to her, and she was just a stand-in. He continued that the wedding would be held in private, and so she would never have to pretend to be his wife in front of others again. Angrily, Heju stood up and began to take off the attire just like he requested. She was about to take off the dress, but Saeyeon stopped her and covered her with his suit. He handed over their wedding vows to her, which were in the form of a contract with weird rules, like the bride cannot initiate a divorce, especially not during the election period, and she cannot publicly disclose her name or face as his wife. If any of that is violated, the penalty will be 2 billion won. Heju, without arguing, though not satisfied with the rules, signed the paper. Then he forcefully put a ring on her finger without her consent. Clearly, he stated they were not married, and she was only a hostage sent to him. That's why he was cold to her and had no affection for her. Back to the present, Saeyeon and Heju at the British Embassy met with the British man and his deaf wife. They exchanged pleasantries. Everyone thought Heju was his wife, but Heju, through her sign interpretation, told the British wife that she had no personal relationship with the spokesperson, and she was only there as an interpreter. Sae-yeon, however, explained that his wife has a disability too, and she was his weakness. He had to keep his wife from the public so as not to expose her to indiscriminate attacks like he is. He sounded so romantic that even the British man was impressed. Afterwards, Hee-ju began to drink and almost got herself drunk, not until Sae-yeon stopped her. She wanted to go home after she's done, but Sae-yeon insisted she just stay quietly next to him. Strangely, Hee-ju began to speak with signals about how he had always hurt her feelings, and then she left in annoyance, even though Sae-yeon couldn't understand half of what she was trying to say. She branched off to the restroom while Sae-yeon continued with his drinks. Soon, his phone rang, and it was the strange number again. He moved away from the crowd and picked up. The caller refused to speak for the first few minutes until Sae-yeon asked him to say how he planned to hurt his wife in the future. The caller mentioned him being at a party, and he was shocked as to how he knew where he was, prompting him to curiously look around the hall. Then he began to move around the whole place looking for the caller, but he couldn't find him. While still on call, the caller revealed that Hee-ju wasn't his real wife, and that his real fiancée that he was supposed to marry was the eldest daughter of the chairman of Chungwon Daily News, Hong In-ah. She ran away the day before the wedding and no one knows where she is. So Sae-yeon married her sister, Hee-ju, instead as a hostage since the two families are in an inseparable symbiotic relationship. The caller threatened to expose this secret unless he got rid of Hee-ju and went back to his real fiancée. Shockingly, the caller was no one but Hee-ju herself. Flashback immediately revealed the night the mysterious man in black called Sae-yeon and threatened to kill his wife. Sae-yeon's response to get her killed really got on her bad nerves, and she spoke asking him to call Sae-yeon back, but he refused to pick. Furious, she drove so roughly that they had an accident. The man in black lost consciousness immediately, and she had the phone to herself. Now, Hee-ju became the mysterious caller requesting Sae-yeon to return things to normal, else his personal life would ruin his father's election when she exposed the secret about his marriage. Disappointed, Sae-yeon doesn't feel threatened. The voice on the phone had been modulated as a male voice, so Sae-yeon couldn't identify it was Hee-ju. Hee-ju talked about how much the mysterious man tortured her that night, as if she wasn't the one, and that got Sae-yeon furious, making him hit his fist on the wall and injure himself. He was so curious about the man and promised to get him arrested. She quickly cut the call before it could reach 10 minutes to stop the number from being traced. Hee-ju, after the call, became so restless. She was not sure if she was in trouble or if he had fallen for her scheme. As she left the restroom, she saw Sae-yeon close to her and wanted to turn back quietly. However, Sae-yeon saw her and gripped her hand, leading her to a room together. With his expression, Hee-ju was utterly scared, thinking he already knew about the phone, but instead he wanted to know about the accident and if she was hurt. Seeing that she was hurt really pissed him off, and he told her to always keep her bodyguard with her and to get checked at the hospital. Unknown to her, Sae-yeon recorded their conversation and sent it to one of the journalists to remove the modulation since it wasn't easy for them to trace the number. Hee-ju was back home. The phone had been with Hee-ju for 2 days now, and she guessed the mysterious man would be looking for it. Just then, Sae-yeon came in requesting her car keys. Knowing that the phone was in her bag, she quickly reached out for the bag and gave the key to him. Sae-yeon left, and then it occurred to her that he wanted to check her car's dash cam. She hurried out to see if he had gotten anything, but instead, he asked her how she got the car home, seeing it was in bad condition. She replied with a text that she had called a tow truck, and luckily for her, nothing was recorded on the dash cam. In the middle of that, a man in black drove rashly past them, and Sae-yeon quickly drew her to himself. The man apologized and left, leaving Sae-yeon extremely scared. He promised to get her a new car and asked her not to go to work anymore, but Hee-ju declined. Sae-yeon requested that Park Do-jae, his administrative officer, check and restore the recording of the accident on the dash cam if he could, and also check traffic cameras from the time of the accident. Next, Sae-yeon visited his mother, and she told him to stop Hee-ju from working during the election period so she could keep quiet and stay low. She regretted making the marriage happen in the first place, and that was because they wanted to establish ties with Chungwon, even if it meant switching the bride. Meanwhile, Sae-yeon's father was able to make it that far because of Chungwon Daily News burying his scandal. Sae-yeon asked his mother if anyone else knew about his marriage apart from the two families, to which she responded no one. It turns out Saeyeon's mother was their country's first negotiation expert and a former criminal psychologist. After tracking all of the routes, they could only find the outside footage and none inside the car. In short, Park couldn't find anything useful about the mysterious caller. Park was concerned that his wife was threatened even though he couldn't recognize her. No one did recognize his wife in the whole nation except the mysterious caller, which made Saeyeon feel unrest. Hee-ju that day had an interpretation session in court, and when it was over, her bodyguard messaged Saeyeon. Saeyeon asked her to take her home, but unfortunately, there was a fight between the couple in court and the bodyguard was signaled to come rescue the incident. On the other hand, Hee-ju was using the restroom when she heard the footsteps of an unknown man approaching. She remembered the mysterious man that approached her the night she had the accident, and their footsteps sounded almost the same way. After the couple had been separated, the bodyguard looked for Hee-ju everywhere, but she was nowhere to be found. She messaged Saeyeon to inform him about it, but in the next minute, she found Hee-ju and reported that she was with a man. It turned out the unknown man that approached her while she was in the restroom was with her now. Though he made her scared at first, he revealed he came to the court to appear as a witness. While the two talked, unknown to them, the bodyguard took pictures of them. The unknown man, Ji Sang-woo, was Hee-ju's friend from 3 years ago, and he could communicate well with her by signing. However, he took on a program at the station where Hee-ju interpreted the news. The program was called Crime Report, and it covers crime cases, and he agreed to take on the program because he had a cold case that he personally wanted to resolve. He collected her number, and then she left. Hee-ju returned home, and her mother came visiting. This time, she asked Hee-ju to perform her duties as a wife to Saeyeon. Otherwise, her father would end up on the street. The reason why Hee-ju was in this marriage was because her sick father was put in a good nursing home. She had proposed to be a substitute bride if they agreed to take care of her dad when Hong In-ae ran away, and that had always been the weakness her mother used against her. She hoped to escape this prison someday. Meanwhile, Saeyeon received a call from the strange number again, and he reluctantly picked the call. This time, he asked how he got information about Hee-ju, because the entire nation thought Hong In-ae was his wife. Instead of answering his questions, the mysterious caller, who happened to be Hee-ju, threatened him to comply with his demands. Seeing that he wasn't going to compromise, she went further to snap a picture of her thigh and sent it to him, claiming she was going to make it go viral with an alarming story. Saeyeon doubted this because he had never seen Hee-ju's thigh, let alone noticed that she had a mole on her thigh. Saeyeon got pissed off again and accused the caller of another offense. The mysterious caller, however, asked him to confirm for himself. Saeyeon angrily returned home that night. On the other hand, Hee-ju became restless because she had unconsciously told him on call to confirm the mole on her thigh himself. When he got home, he went to Hee-ju's room and tried to remove the blanket she had covered herself with. As they struggled, he was able to remove the blanket, but he fell on her face to face. For a few minutes, they stared at each other. However, nothing expected happened. He stood up and informed her that the presidential office would announce that they are recruiting a sign language interpreter soon, and she could just go for it since she insisted on working. He moved out of the room and saw 2 cups on the table. The memories of 3 years ago set in when Hee-ju tried to make a romantic dinner. However, Saeyeon rejected her feelings and warned her never to interfere in his ways. The next morning, surprisingly, Saeyeon was watching the news, which was unlike him. Hee-ju was shocked to see him at home at such a time. He, however, requested breakfast, and Hee-ju wanted to make coffee. Instead, Saeyeon entered the kitchen and decided to prepare a proper meal. While at it, he told her she would be getting new guards due to what happened at the courthouse. Hee-ju assured him she was safe, as the guy she met there was her college friend and a good person. Unbelievably, Saeyeon actually made breakfast for her. And just as expected, Saeyeon continued trying to figure out who the mysterious caller actually was. Now, the mysterious character, Hee-ju, visited her dad in the hospital, and her dad didn't want her to go. Hee-ju told him he should have stopped her mother from leaving back then, or better still have her live with him instead of her mother. Now we got to know that Hee-ju's mother was first married to him and bore him Hee-ju. Her father let her go with Hee-ju because he wanted her to raise Hee-ju to be an anchor in a proper broadcasting station, just like she wished, so she wouldn't end up in cheap nightclubs like him, as he used to be a singer in nightclubs. However, ever since she had been living with her mother, she knew no peace, and now she had to pretend to be mute, living in Hong In-ae's shadow. That was too much burden on her, and she wept so bitterly. The mysterious caller kept calling, but Saeyeon asked her to call back in 5 minutes. She did, and while on the call, she heard an explosion and couldn't reach him anymore. She returned home, but Saeyeon wasn't home. The next morning, when she woke up, she found out on the news that a strange man in black had come to Saeyeon's office and caused a fire explosion. Hee-ju was shocked, and just then, Saeyeon entered and demanded to check her thigh, but she refused to let him. Instantly, we saw a flashback to 3 years ago, when Saeyeon intentionally made Hee-ju his bride a day before the wedding after Hong In-ae threatened to expose his family's secret if he didn't cancel the arranged wedding. Now, things have become more complicated. Saeyeon carried Hee-ju to the room to check her thigh, but Hee-ju was smart enough to manage to get away with it. She acted as if she knew nothing about what he was saying by asking numerous questions. Saeyeon, seeing her reaction, apologized and let go of her. He requested her phone to check for hacking, and she quickly deleted the picture of her thigh from the modulated phone. Saeyeon's dad and Chairman Hong went on shooting together with their wives. However, Saeyeon's mother never liked Hee-ju's mother and never wanted a friendly relationship with her, no matter how much Hee-ju's mother tried. Back in the office, Saeyeon was checking through Hee-ju's phone and found Ji Sang-woo's chat with her. He sent a picture of when they visited an orphanage home called Nuri Dream Center together. Sang-woo had resumed duty for the crime program and was preparing for the show. He was asked if he had a crime scene he would like to look into. Coincidentally, he then revealed that he grew up in an orphanage called Nuri Dream Center. So, Sang-woo was an orphan. About 20 years ago, in the town where the orphanage was located, there was an enormous mansion owned by a wealthy family. One day, Sang-woo visited the mansion and found a young master from Seoul who came to visit. His room was filled with all sorts of toys, and they played there joyfully every day. But one day he saw something terrible in the mansion and ran away. Everyone with Sang-woo was curious to hear what he saw, but his phone rang and he left, leaving his listeners in suspense. At the same time, Saeyeon was checking out Nuri Dream Center on the internet and also saw that Sang-woo wanted to have lunch with Hee-ju at a restaurant. Yuri, the female newscaster who works at the same broadcasting station as Hee-ju, came to the same restaurant only to find them there. Unexpectedly, she was going to have lunch with Saeyeon. When Saeyeon got there, he first called Hee-ju but regarded her as an interpreter. There was another fire explosion outside Saeyeon's office, and Park was there. He sighted a man in black and ran after him. Luckily, he caught up with him. At the restaurant, the four had their lunch together at the same table. Park called Saeyeon to inform him about the incident and that the culprit was being interrogated at the police station. Saeyeon and Hee-ju left the restaurant at the same time, but Saeyeon collected Sang-woo's business cards before leaving. Hee-ju received a hiring letter from the government, but she seemed not to be happy about it. Saeyeon asked Park to look into Sang-woo, and he gave him his business card. However, Sang-woo was a popular YouTuber with 20,000 subscribers. Hee-ju called Saeyeon again, with the mysterious number 406. She wanted him to accept her offer quickly, but he insisted on knowing why she wanted him to leave Hee-ju. Saeyeon made it clear to him that he wasn't going to give him what he wanted. When he returned home, he also made it clear to Hee-ju that he would never divorce her in case someone wanted to mislead her. And moreover, he wouldn't tolerate his name being dragged through the mud. Funny enough, Saeyeon went to lie in her room because he was afraid the mysterious man might come, and he told her to forget everything that happened that day. Hee-ju slept and dreamt of how her mother had asked her not to speak and to pretend to be deaf so they could be at the mercy of Chairman Hong, who had just lost his wife and son and whose daughter was deaf. Hee-ju's dad was taken for a walk by his caretaker. However, she returned to get a blanket for him. A man in black then came behind him. He covered him with a blanket and pushed him away. Next, he called Hee-ju on a video call to show her father. He also revealed that he knew the phone was with her and demanded that she tell him what she was using it for. She told him she wanted a divorce from him. The mysterious man was happy about that, as they now had the same goal, and she could keep the phone. When she checked on her father at the hospital, he was safe, but he kept saying, "Call him." The police took Hee-ju with them to file a report, and on the way, she made them stop the car. At that moment, Saeyeon arrived because he had been called by the hospital. He was part of the emergency list. When he got there, he revealed to the police that Hee-ju was his wife. Saeyeon told the police to keep their personal information private in the meantime. He then reassured Hee-ju not to worry about her father again, as he would move him to another nursing home. Unexpectedly, Hee-ju broke into tears and made a sound that surprised Saeyeon. He never thought she could make sounds, He even encouraged her to cry as much as she wanted. Yuri met Sang-woo at another restaurant she visited and revealed that Saeyeon happened to be a good colleague who taught her many things, even though he looked scary to her at first. Until one day, he quit his job as an anchor and got appointed as spokesperson. She added that Saeyeon's family is a famous political family. His grandfather was a bigwig who had done everything except for the presidency. His father is a strong presidential candidate, and his relatives are former or current ministers, prosecutor generals, mayors, and lawmakers. Naturally, he married the daughter of a very influential family, the eldest daughter of Chairman Hong of Chungwoon Daily News. Saeyeon took Heeju to a hotel room to eat and relax. He then returned downstairs to his parents, who had been waiting for them in the hotel restaurant. After some minutes, Heeju joined them. Chairman Hong, however, talked down on Heeju for not being able to talk, deeming her useless to their political agenda. Saeyeon was pissed off and told him he would decide if he would join his election campaign. His father grew angry and threatened to crush him. Our main character isn't an easy person to threaten. He talked back to his father and left, holding hands with his wife. All the while, his mother just sat there watching father and son do their thing. Saeyeon was romantic this time, telling Heeju not to take his parents' words to heart. The day of the presidential office sign language interpreter interview finally arrived, and Heeju was present. At first, Saeyeon was watching the interview from his office, but later he came in person for a questioning session. He asked Heeju why she did the interview so well, as if she had the script in advance, and sometimes she signed before Saeyeon spoke. In response, she said she practiced with the videos. He then proposed that they test her with different videos. Yet the results were all the same. She performed incredibly well. She had been practicing sign language obsessively with Saeyeon's briefings and knew well how his upper lip and teeth moved. When he set his articulation points, she studied that in particular. Saeyeon then decided to test her by reading a document she had never seen before on the spot. To his greatest amazement, Heeju interpreted as if she knew what he was thinking and going to say, leaving Saeyeon to wonder what a mysterious being she was. After the interview, Saeyeon moved Heeju's father to a new nursing home, just as he promised. He also told him he's going to protect him and Heeju, no matter what. Regarding the interview, everyone liked Heeju already because of the way she studied Saeyeon so passionately, and they looked forward to whom Saeyeon would select. Saeyeon also confessed that he liked her. Saeyeon stared at the document where Heeju's name was written for the interview evaluation. Then, the memories of how he first met Heeju as a child flooded his mind. He had offered her food when her mother scolded her for being pathetic when she was hungry. Fast forward to the present, Saeyeon received a message from Heeju, thanking him for changing her father's nursing home. Heeju saw a notification on her phone, and when she checked it, it was from Hong In-a, indicating that she was back. She immediately recalled the night when her mother told her she would stand in for Hong In-a at her wedding the next day. On the wedding day, Saeyeon also informed her that she would return the wedding ring when Hong In-a returned. Heeju got back the mysterious phone she had once disposed of. Saeyeon also called Yuri to find out more about Sang-woo, and she told him he was from the orphanage home. Then Heeju called Saeyeon again as the mysterious caller. This time she told him that Hong In-a might return anytime soon, so he should get rid of Heeju before she returns and complicates things. Saeyeon then revealed that he had already made a deal with Hong In-a, and so she could never return to him. Saeyeon returned home and apologized to Heeju for underestimating her, commending her for doing well. He also informed her that he would be attending the Chungwoon Daily News 70th anniversary event the next day. The anniversary was a grand celebration, and the presidential candidate, Paik Wee-young, was also present. Heeju attended the event as well, but her mother dragged her to a room, asking why her father had been moved from the nursing home. Heeju told her it was because her husband did it, but she didn't care to ask why. Heeju left the party and went outside to sit alone. She resolved to call Saeyeon and talked about how gloomy and greedy Heeju was about money. However, Saeyeon professed that she was not like that, and that she was the only one who had really made him feel like himself. He walked out of the party to the same spot where Heeju was. Unbeknownst to her, when Saeyeon went to the police station to file a report, the policeman talked about her screaming, and he had seen the video where she spoke. Saeyeon saw Heeju and her mother when she dragged her to a room, and he overheard all she said. When Heeju's mother came out and saw Saeyeon, he proposed that they walk together arm in arm. He then asked her why Heeju couldn't speak, to which she replied that she was suffering from shock from a car accident as a child. And it had lasted so long because the guilt was overwhelming. She had lost her brother, and her sister went deaf in the accident. Now, her mother sensed that he was looking out for Hee-ju when he warned her to treat her well and to mind how she talked to his wife. Somehow, he found out where Hee-ju was and saw she was on a call. She quickly put the phone in her bag and tried to move away carelessly. When she slipped, Se-yeon caught her, and they fell to the ground together. When they stood up, he asked her how she was able to make calls, but she couldn't respond. She rushed off, and at that moment, Park called in to inform Se-yeon that he had been able to track the location of the caller, and he was at the hotel where Se-yeon currently was. Se-yeon was shocked when he learned that the person was right beside him. After the party, when they got home, Se-yeon checked Hee-ju's thigh for the scar she had from when she was bitten by a dog when she was young and never let out a scream. He wondered how long she could hold out. Then, she recalled how her mother treated her when she expressed a desire to be a newscaster as a child. She had been afraid that Chairman Hong would kick them out if she talked in front of Hong In-ah, who had lost her voice in the accident. Hee-ju rushed out angrily and encountered a dog that pursued her, but Se-yeon came to her rescue. He told her to always be prepared to fight back against anyone, as there would always be a chance for revenge. She scraped her knee, so he offered to carry her on his back. Now, in the present, Se-yeon couldn't sleep because he was filled with anger. As he lay awake, his thoughts spiraled into a vivid imagining. In his mind, he stood up and barged into Hee-ju's room, demanding to know why she had been deceiving him all this while. She replied with a text on her phone that everyone has secrets, and that he also had something he was hiding from her. The imagined confrontation only fueled his frustration further, leaving him restless through the night. It was a joyful moment at Hee-ju's broadcasting station when she received the message that she had passed the interview. Her colleagues were sincerely happy for her, seeing her dreams come true. Sadly, she had no family to share the good news with except Se-yeon. She summoned the courage to send him a message stating that she passed and mistakenly sent a love emoji. Disturbed by her mistake, Hee-ju felt embarrassed while Se-yeon was flustered, but congratulated her on passing. That message put Se-yeon in a good mood throughout the day, and he enjoyed lunch with his colleagues. Sang-woo visited the mansion from 20 years ago, where he had seen something terrible. He went with Yoo-ri, who was covering the story. When they got to the room, he unveiled that he had seen a cute cat that day, and that child he had played with brought a knife and asked them to open the cat's belly. He became scared and ran out of the room. While they returned, he narrated more about how a few kids from the orphanage had gone missing shortly after being adopted, which he had learned only after becoming an adult. Sang-woo was the first to discover that mansion and suggested that other kids go as well, which caused him guilt and a desire to dig into the story now. Yoo-ri also confessed that she accidentally told Se-yeon that Sang-woo grown up in an orphanage when he had asked about him. Se-yeon had contacted a boutique to get a suit ready for Hee-ju as a gift for her new job. Coincidentally, Hong In-a dropped by at the same boutique. Se-yeon also came, and he loved the suit on Hee-ju. He saw another dress that was the same as the one Hong In-ah had taken and asked Hee-ju to try it on, but she refused. As they walked out to eat, they found another dress, and he urged her to try it on. Just then, Park called and informed Se-yeon that the mysterious caller was a woman, or was using someone else's voice without being the perpetrator. While on the call, Hee-ju came out in the dress and looked gorgeous. Se-yeon was mesmerized by her beauty and unconsciously ended the call. Unbeknownst to them, Hong In-ah was watching. Sang-woo proposed that he would like to have a drink with Hee-ju, and Se-yeon noticed it. He insisted he would go with her. Upon arriving, Sang-woo asked why they were together, and Se-yeon replied that Hee-ju wanted to treat him to dinner. Sang-woo, however, wanted to know why Se-yeon was so interested in him. He also brought up that Hee-ju wanted to be a newscaster, and not just a sign language interpreter. Feeling the tension growing, Hee-ju interrupted, and, in anger, left them. Se-yeon also made an excuse to follow after her. He received a call again from the mysterious number, and was so absorbed in the conversation that he almost got knocked down by a car. Hee-ju was nearby, and when she saw this, she screamed his name and rushed out to rescue him. Luckily, Se-yeon was safe, but Hee-ju sustained a minor injury. Se-yeon recalled that Hee-ju called his name and had wanted her to speak again, but she didn't. The next day at work, spokesperson Sa-yeon began learning sign language with Hee-ju. Park informed him that the voice analysis was ready, and he listened to it. The previous night, the mysterious man in black made another call to Hee-ju. He was the one who drove the car that almost hit Seyeon the night before Hee-ju saved him. He asked why she was no longer considering a divorce because he really wanted to see Seyeon ruined. He instructed Hee-ju to reveal her true identity very soon. After listening to the voice analysis from Park's phone, Seyeon was confused, as the only person he could suspect was Hee-ju. He then decided to send an audio file for Park to compare with it. Later, Seyeon left the dinner feast drunk, and Hee-ju helped him inside. When they got in, they fell, and Hee-ju ended up falling on top of him, their lips touching in a kissing posture. The next morning, Seyeon saw Park's message indicating that the voice comparison was a 99.9% match. However, from his analysis, he figured out that she wasn't involved in the kidnapping, explosion, or nursing home incident. Now, the mission was to break the connection between them. Seyeon, who had always thought he could control situations perfectly and make better judgments than anyone, desperately ignored the hints about Hee-ju possibly being the mysterious caller, hoping it wasn't true. Throughout the day, Seyeon was fidgeting and even ended his sign interpretation class angrily. Seyeon's father was informed that Hong In-ah was back in Korea, so he wanted his wife to meet her and asked her why she had caused such a mess. However, she seemed bothered by something else. 20 years ago, they had locked a child in a secluded room, and now the guilt gripped her. Seyeon's father, on the other hand, didn't care. Next, Hee-ju met with Hong In-ah, and surprisingly, she was talking. Seeing the expression on Hee-ju's face, Hong In-ah explained that she had undergone surgery and it had been successful. She wanted Hee-ju to talk too because she knew she didn't speak due to her. This made Hee-ju incredibly angry, and she walked away. Hong In-ah went after her and apologized, but Hee-ju made it clear that she would decide when to talk and didn't want Hong In-ah to interfere in her life anymore. Hong In-ah also revealed to Hee-ju that Seyeon had actually asked for her as a hostage to have a connection with their family, and that this wasn't her plan. At home, Seyeon was looking for the mysterious phone in Hee-ju's room when she walked in on him. Seyeon found some underwear her mother had bought for her, and they struggled over it. In the scuffle, they fell onto the bed, and Seyeon suddenly remembered that they had kissed the night he was drunk. Recalling this, he pushed Hee-ju away and ran out of the room. Seyeon then went out for a walk when the mysterious Hee-ju called him again. This time, she proposed a question-and-answer session between them, with the rule that they must speak the truth. Seyeon revealed that Hee-ju had always been a relief to him whenever he had nightmares as a child, which is why he decided to help her escape from what felt like a prison. However, he realized that marrying him was also like a prison. Seyeon promised to give her whatever she needed and insisted that she should not consider a divorce anymore, and she should never make the call again. Later, Seyeon and his team created time for a retreat to connect better with their new sign language interpreters. Seyeon had lunchboxes delivered to each of them before the retreat. Strangely, Seyeon wanted to be closer to Hee-ju than anyone else, and the other team members could sense the chemistry between them. Meanwhile, Yuri and Sang-woo visited the orphanage home where he had grown up, and the children there were friendly with them. They saw pictures of the other children who had grown up with Sang-woo, but some of the kids were missing, among them at least 4 of them. They asked the nun who was with the children about the incident, but she couldn't share much information. Sang-woo could remember 3 of the kids that went missing, but the nun told him there were 4. From the pictures, there were twins, and one of the twin brothers was also missing. The team arrived at the park and competed in pairs. Seyeon and Hee-ju teamed up. Seyeon struggled at first with navigating this, as he wasn't much of a sports person, but Hee-ju helped him. In the end, their team won, and they took pictures together as a prize, leading to more bonding between the obscure lovers. Afterwards, they decided to go hiking, and once again, Hee-ju and Seyeon were together. When they reached the mountain, they decided to take a picture together as a team. However, some citizens spotted their favorite spokesperson, Seyeon, and decided to take pictures with him. While they struggled with this, someone lost their balance and fell down the cliff. It was Hee-ju, and she was nowhere to be found, leaving Seyeon almost insane with worry. All that needed to be summoned were summoned to find Hee-ju. Seyeon even went down the hill, but she was still nowhere to be found. Unfortunately, it was getting dark, and no one knew what would happen next. Meanwhile, Hee-ju was lying unconscious at the bottom of the cliff, seriously injured. She recalled the last event and reached for her phone, but it was off. She had no other choice but to use the mysterious phone, which could only call Seyeon. Hesitating at first, she eventually made the call. Seyeon picked up immediately and acted like he didn't know it was Hee-ju speaking. Fortunately, Seyeon had put a portable flare in Hee-ju's backpack, and he instructed her to ignite it by striking the top lid. At that moment, Saeon was scared and worried to death at the same time. Shortly, he saw the flare and hurried towards its direction. Now let's unravel one of the mysteries in this drama. Hee-ju revisited the chaotic moment of her life as a young girl on the day of the accident that led to Hong In-ae becoming deaf. Hee-ju and Chairman Hong's 2 kids were returning from an outing, and one could tell that they really had a great time. Suddenly, a vehicle hit their car from the side where the male child, Yoo-jin, was sitting. The other 2 kids lost consciousness immediately, whereas Hee-ju was unscathed. The 2 kids were rescued, but Hee-ju was left behind and couldn't even ask for help. Hong In-ae went deaf, and her brother died. With that, Hee-ju ceased speaking because her mother felt she had no right to her voice anymore since Hong In-ae lost hers. Hoping that the chairman would feel sorry for them. Because she loved her mother, she unarguably agreed. Since then, she had been living a completely different life, and she felt so sorry for herself. Back in the present, after an intense search, Saeon finally found the only woman he had cherished all his life, lying helplessly at the bottom of the cliff. He carried her on his back to safety. Hee-ju finally woke up in a hospital bed to find Saeon looking miserable by her side. She asked him to stay by her, and Saeon held her tightly, assuring her that he would be there forever. The incident was reported to Chairman Paik, and they decided to twist the incident to their advantage. Now, Hee-ju realized that Saeon was aware that she was the mysterious caller and feared he might ask for a divorce the moment she was discharged. However, Saeon still cared for her, and he confessed he knew she could talk, but hadn't yet admitted that he knew she was the mysterious caller using number 406. He granted her sick leave so she could rest and left to attend to other matters, but he asked her to call if anything happened. Strangely enough, Saeon left the mysterious phone in her backpack, and she wondered if he didn't see it. However, she also realized how much the phone had helped her not to lose the man who loved her so much. Chairman Paik, meanwhile, framed the incident to portray Saeon as the victim, asking for a thorough investigation to show his fatherly gesture to the citizens and garner their sympathy. Hee-ju's mother met with Hong In-ae, who revealed that she had received something the day before her wedding that scared her away. However, Hee-ju's mother didn't care to know the details and instructed her to keep a low profile and not mess things up for Hee-ju. Hong In-ae declared she was not back for that, but was back to help Hee-ju. There was more to know about Saeon than being a spokesperson. Saeon met with his father and warned him never to bring up the incident again. Then, another mystery unfolded. When Saeon was young, he was not Chairman Paik's son, but was forced to live as their son and was given the name Paik Saeon. Saeon revealed that he never wanted any of that and made it clear that the victim in the incident was Hee-ju. Sang-woo tried as much as he could recall to craft the dragon ring he had seen in the scary mansion he had visited while living at the orphanage. He put out a request on his YouTube channel for anyone who had information about the dragon ring. Saeon stayed with Hee-ju all night to look after her and did a great job washing her up. While he was out of the room, Hee-ju tried to reach him, but he messaged her to go to sleep as he awaited a call. Hee-ju understood the message he was trying to get across and called him using number 406. Saeon revealed to her that he knew she was a woman, and he felt peaceful talking on the phone with her like that. He then made an offer for her to join him in catching the culprit together, asking her to tell him everything she knew about him. Saeon also revealed that the incident at the retreat was not an accident, but a criminal incident, clarifying that it was not a political attack as his father assumed, but a threat to his personal safety. Hee-ju then provided a description of the mysterious man who had kidnapped her, making it public that he had an accomplice. Saeon's family became anxious about the situation, especially Saeon's so-called father. They worried he might know other secrets about their family beyond Saeon's marriage. When the strange man found out he had been exposed, he grew furious because he wasn't the one who pushed Hee-ju. It was his accomplice. Now he was the only one about to be in trouble. Chairman Hong knew Saeon was trying to hide something, which is why he used the situation to draw attention to himself, effectively covering an issue with another issue. As things grew more puzzling, Hee-ju received a message from the mysterious man, who told her he was on his way to collect the phone since she had backed out of the plan. Hee-ju hurried to the door and locked it, struggling with the person behind it. Unexpectedly, it was Saeon, who managed to force the door open. Scared, Hee-ju jumped on Saeon, trembling. She was slightly wounded, but after some minutes of calm, she slept by his side. After Saeon had fallen asleep, Hee-ju went outside the room and called him through number 406. She decided to give Saeon the phone for investigation. Saeon proposed they meet at the park, the same park she had visited with Hong In-ae and her brother on the day of the accident. Since then, the term amusement park had become forbidden in their household. Hee-ju was treated to rides and ice cream at the park, but had yet to meet with Se-yeon. Finally, they met, and she dropped the phone in front of him. Se-yeon picked it up and thanked her for her hard work. Hee-ju then realized he knew all along that she was the caller. Instead of the furious reaction she expected, she received the most passionate kiss ever, with their eyes closed. Se-yeon made breakfast for Hee-ju the next morning, and they talked a lot together. Se-yeon revealed that the past 3 years, when he had been treating her unfairly, he felt good simply because he knew she was at home. When he looked at her, the noisy world around him became quiet and peaceful. He confessed he was scared of her developing feelings for him, because he feared he could end up giving her his heart, everything, and just cave in. Hee-ju, too, revealed that she had received a message from the mysterious man about returning the phone. Se-yeon assured her not to worry as he would soon track him down. Se-yeon enjoyed having calls with Hee-ju as 406, as he always called her, and he never wanted those calls to end. In his head, he wondered if she would accept him if she knew everything about him. The two lovers resolved to spend more time together and do things they had never imagined doing together, since it was Se-yeon's day off. However, they couldn't bring that to reality, because Se-yeon received a call from work that he had to show up. Funny enough, Mr. Kang called him just to show support and encouragement. While he was still disappointed, Park joined the scene and reported that they had found the culprit's location. Se-yeon decided to go alone without Park, and he told him to be careful. Meanwhile, Hee-ju received a video from the culprit revealing some secrets about Se-yeon, though she didn't seem to understand it, but she felt curious. Just at that moment, she received a message from Sang-woo, requesting that they meet. She met Sang-woo at the orphanage home where he visited, and Hee-ju inquired about the crime incident he was investigating. Coincidentally, Se-yeon's destination was the same mansion. When he entered, all he found was a strange video accusing him of being a killer. Sang-woo and Hee-ju arrived at the mansion too, but they didn't enter since they saw the door was open. Se-yeon spotted them as they drove back and followed suit. He called Hee-ju, but she wouldn't pick up. Sang-woo then revealed he knew she could speak all along. Se-yeon drove past them and double-crossed them, while Sang-woo tried to stop Hee-ju, but she got out of the car and went with Se-yeon. Se-yeon warned Sang-woo to stop any investigation he was doing and to stay away from Hee-ju. On their way, Hee-ju showed Se-yeon the video, demanding that he reveal everything about himself and not hide anything from her. He asked her what would happen if she discovered he had a different personality, but she seemed carefree about it. Meanwhile, Hong In-ae met with her father and asked him why he had left her when she refused the marriage. She received a letter the day before her wedding stating that Se-yeon's DNA was different from his father's, and she wondered if her father had sent them, because he hadn't looked surprised when he showed it to her. He had a contract signed with Chairman Paik that allowed him to have whatever he wanted, which he used to convince Se-yeon's parents to agree to marry Hee-ju as a hostage. Even the car accident she vowed to investigate stopped all of a sudden, making Hong In-ae curious. Chairman Hong, however, refused to reveal anything to Hong In-ae, instead asking her to help Hee-ju. Se-yeon put up the video the culprit sent to Hee-ju for the journalist to examine. At the presidential office, Mr. Kang received a call, and the caller wanted to tell Se-yeon something. As soon as Se-yeon returned, Mr. Park informed him about the caller, who asked him to tell Se-yeon that he was alive. Mr. Kang tracked the location already, and it was a business place called Hwan Fishing. Se-yeon went there, and as he drove, a lot of past mysteries clouded his mind. Meanwhile, Hong In-ae visited Hee-ju at her home and showed her Se-yeon's DNA results. Se-yeon reached the location only to find the place set on fire. He tried to rescue the unconscious man he found there, but the fire escalated. After seeing the DNA results, Hee-ju wasn't surprised, even though she hadn't known before. Hong In-ae promised to unveil every secret the Paik family was hiding and urged Hee-ju to let go of the marriage. However, Hee-ju made it clear that it was her choice to be with Se-yeon, and admitted she had also deceived him in the past. Hong In-ae confessed how much she liked Hee-ju while they were young, even though she never liked her mother. She appreciated the way Hee-ju called her name and thought it was nice to have a younger sister like her. She added that the DNA results were sent to her anonymously, and she didn't know who sent them. Nonetheless, the sender intended for the marriage to not happen. Meanwhile, the fire continued to escalate, and Se-yeon was still lying unconscious with the man in the fire. He eventually woke up amidst the flames and desperately struggled to help the unknown man escape. Back at the hospital, As time passed and Saeon still hadn't returned, Heeju became disturbed and resolved to dial 112 to report him missing. She mentioned that her husband had recently been threatened by a madman who set fires and threw bombs, but she couldn't bring herself to mention her husband's name. As she thought about it, she realized that Saeon's parents had shown him no affection, especially after Hong and A mentioned that they only knew Saeon when he was 15 and had never seen him before then, even though they lived next door. She pondered whether they had a biological son. If so, why were they hiding him? To answer these questions, Heeju visited Saeon's parents that night. She told them that Saeon had yet to return home and that she couldn't reach him. Speaking freely shocked them, as she had never spoken in front of them before. She inquired why they kept their beloved grandson hidden until he was 15, clearly stating that she already knew Saeon wasn't their biological son. She challenged them to see to his well-being if he was truly necessary and important to them. With that, Heeju left, leaving the two astonished. One of Chairman Paik's men approached Heeju as she exited and revealed some secrets about the Paik family. He disclosed that when their biological son was young, he had eye surgery, and since then, his eyes no longer appeared different colors. Hearing this made everything the mysterious man in black once said begin to make sense. Heeju then received a call from Sang-woo, urging her to come to J&P Seoul Hospital because Saeon had been rushed there. As the scene shifted, Sang-woo was at Hwan Fishing, where he met a man named Jong Jin-seok. Jong became agitated as soon as Sang-woo mentioned the mansion and abruptly pushed him out. Coincidentally, as Sang-woo returned, he saw Saeon drive past him with a serious expression. Unbeknownst to Saeon, Sang-woo followed him to Hwan Fishing. When Sang-woo arrived at the burning location, he bravely rescued both Saeon and the unconscious man. As young Saeon was seen fishing by the riverbank during a flashback, he spotted a rich man and a child with Mr. Jong, whom he had lived with then. The rich old man handed a black bag to Mr. Jong, who bowed to accept it. He also whispered to him, but Saeon couldn't hear. Mr. Jong then took the bag to the boat and instructed Saeon to go to bed early that night and not to come out. Curiosity got the better of Saeon, and he disobeyed Mr. Jong's instructions. Later, he witnessed the rich old man pushing a child down the river as he struggled to breathe. Mr. Jong swiftly covered Saeon's mouth and took him back inside. Soon after, Saeon heard footsteps and rushed out, only to encounter Chairman Paik sputtering things he couldn't understand. This sequence of events haunted Saeon as nightmares while he was in the hospital. Upon waking up, he realized he was in Sang-woo's father's hospital, and Sang-woo promised to ensure that word wouldn't get out so he could relax and receive proper treatment. When Saeon asked about the person with him, Sang-woo took him to the man, who was in poor condition. Sang-woo was then forced to inquire about Saeon's relationship with Mr. Jong, and Saeon explained that he was the one who raised him. He elaborated that the situation was personal and complicated, and he didn't want it involving Heeju. At that moment, Saeon apologized to Sang-woo for treating him poorly and begged him to do whatever he could to ensure Mr. Jong woke up, as he was a key witness in the Senil Child Care Center case and could provide crucial information. Meanwhile, Heeju returned home in search of the mysterious phone, but would not pick up Saeon's calls, no matter how much he tried to reach her. Eventually, she found the phone. Chairman Paik held a video session with journalists, and while Saeon was supposed to be there, he couldn't. However, he didn't seem to care because he had invited someone to take his place, Hong In-a. He referred to her as his daughter-in-law in front of the cameras, which shocked Saeon's mother, who had not been informed about this. Heeju resolved to take the phone to the police station. Saeon reasoned that she must be there and decided to meet her there, even in his critical condition. He stopped her from handing over the phone, relieved that she still loved him despite knowing he wasn't Chairman Paik's biological son. The video session that Chairman Paik held went awry when Hong In-a accidentally hinted that Saeon had a different identity. However, Chairman Paik quickly covered it up, claiming she was drunk. In the midst of it, the package he ordered arrived. Abalone from Wando, but pieces of fish were delivered instead. Saeon's mother rushed out to check the delivery and spotted a man in black riding a motorcycle. She quickly got into her car and drove after him. Yuri met with Sang-woo and observed the injuries he sustained in the fire incident. She tried to pry details from him, but he insisted it involved someone's personal life and he couldn't share. Yuri advised him to stop digging into the mansion case since higher-ups didn't want them to air it because someone was trying to cover it up. Saeon revealed that he had been able to track Heeju's location earlier because he used the location-sharing feature on his phone. He promised to always find her, no matter how, and reassured her that she just had to wait, even if she couldn't find him in the future. All Saeyeon wanted was to leave behind the name Paik Saeyeon and have a fresh start with the one he loved, Hee-ju. Sang-woo called Saeyeon when Mr. Jong was awake, and Mr. Jong asked for Saeyeon as soon as he woke up. When they met, Mr. Jong revealed that he had saved the child the rich man had pushed into the river because he couldn't bring himself to kill him. The boy had lost all his memories, and his mental faculties had weakened, so Mr. Jong thought it would be okay if he quietly took care of him. Saeyeon asked Mr. Jong where the black bag he was instructed to dispose of by Chairman Paik was. Meanwhile, Saeyeon's mother didn't stop following the delivery man. She pursued him to his home. Sang-woo revealed that he discovered Hee-ju could speak because the nun at the orphanage told him she sang a lullaby for a baby one day she visited. He assured Hee-ju that Saeyeon was protecting her and was not hiding her. Just as he had said before, his wife was his weakness. The team found out which hospital their favorite boss was staying at and decided to visit him to deliver papers and coffee for the upcoming Environmental Climate Day event. Saeyeon and Hee-ju looked forward to working side by side for the first time. Their presentation was impressive, even making Hee-ju's father proud of her. As events unfolded, HBC journalist informed Saeyeon that there were twins among the missing orphans. Meanwhile, Mr. Jong had earlier revealed to Saeyeon the location where he could find the culprits, Yeongmyeon, Sinjuk Mountain. Saeyeon headed to the mountain alone. Just then, the HBC journalist called him again, reporting that the police gave him access to check the missing person's family DNA database. He searched for twins from the Sinul Child Care Center in 2000 and sent the information to him. Saeyeon was shocked when he received the information, and we were shocked to see Saeyeon's most trusted worker drove Hee-ju into the forest unconsciously after giving her a bottle of water on the request that Saeyeon wanted him to take her home. Now he's not picking up Saeyeon's calls anymore, and he couldn't reach Hee-ju. The tension heightened as things became more intense. The mysterious man in black finally unveiled his face as he awaited his accomplice at the riverbank. He sent him a picture of Hee-ju lying unconscious in the car, and the accomplice turned out to be someone unbelievable, Mr. Park, Saeyeon's most trusted and personal worker. All this time that Park had worked with Saeyeon, he had been the one collaborating with the mysterious man in black and was even his master. Park later realized that the mysterious man had been deceiving him and reckoned that he was the real Paik Saeyeon. He used Hee-ju to lure Saeyeon out, setting the stage for their meeting. In a moment of combat, the mysterious man took the upper hand and struck Park hard with a rod, pushing him into the river with the intent to get rid of him. Meanwhile, he messaged Saeyeon, telling him to come to the same location after sending Hee-ju's pictures as bait. When Saeyeon arrived at the riverside, he recognized it as the same place where Mr. Jong had brought him up. Finding a black bag on the boat in the river, he recalled it was identical to the one he had seen with the old rich man on the day of the fiery incident. Saeyeon ran toward the river and opened the bag, only to find Mr. Park inside. He feared that he must have hurt Hee-ju. Park reassured him that she was still safe. When he looked behind, he saw that the mysterious man was driving the car Hee-ju was in. Saeyeon rushed out of the water, screaming her name, and miraculously, Hee-ju woke up. She managed to make the mysterious man stop the car, rushing down to meet Saeyeon. The mysterious man drove backward, attempting to hit them, but they managed to escape. Now standing face to face, Saeyeon dragged the miserable culprit from the vehicle. It was revealed that the culprit was Chairman Paik's biological son, whom they had tried to discard, and he was after Saeyeon to claim his place. Saeyeon declared he would return everything the man claimed, except for Hee-ju. She was off limits. Hee-ju then called for an ambulance as Saeyeon and the culprit exchanged punches. Just as the mysterious man was about to stab Saeyeon, Park intervened, taking the stab on his behalf. As Park lay there, he began to confess that he had intentionally stayed by Saeyeon's side because he believed he was the real Saeyeon who had killed his brother. He explained that on the mountain, he was the one who had pushed Hee-ju that day so Saeyeon could experience the pain of losing someone precious to him. However, it was him. It was the miserable, mysterious man in black. Saeyeon tried to apply pressure to Park's wound to prevent significant blood loss, but Park ultimately lost consciousness. Park had always seemed like a trustworthy person to him, and he wondered why he entrusted everything to him, even the woman he loved. Flashback scenes showed Saeyeon's mother meeting the mysterious man in the mansion. He first spoke of how Chairman Paik Jang-ho had pushed him into the water that night, and how much he despised that old man. Saeon's mother cried, claiming the old man tricked her, and now she's not willing to lose him again. Suddenly, Chairman Paik's men arrived and knocked her unconscious, while the real Saeon managed to escape. The police were conducting a thorough investigation of Park's house and his accomplice. They discovered he had been hacking Saeon and another unknown target, but the information was encrypted, making it unclear how long it would take to decrypt it. Park refused to provide any information. Fortunately, Park was alive. Saeon visited him, asking him to trust him because he had once trusted him before. Hong Ina was shocked to learn that the real Saeon was alive. She remembered a day when she heard her little brother Yoo-jin crying in the backyard and thought she saw a boy around their age, but when she saw the supposed Saeon again, he was much taller than the boy she had seen, indicating that the child must have been the real Saeon. Shortly after that, the real Saeon disappeared, suggesting that the accident might not have been accidental, and that Yoo-jin may have seen the face of Saeon, whom they had been hiding. In the middle of their conversation, Heeju's mother entered and was surprised to see Heeju talking. However, Heeju made it clear to her that she would no longer do what she wanted and would not be the president's daughter-in-law, just like she had always imagined. Heeju's mother left angrily, but Ine and Heeju continued their discussion. It was then that Ine revealed that she now knew who had sent the DNA report to Heeju. That night, when Saeon returned home, Heeju had set a romantic atmosphere. She revealed that she knew he was the one who sent the DNA report to Ine because he had loved her long before the wedding, which was why he had proposed switching brides the night before the wedding. The fake Saeon couldn't deny this and promised to propose to her properly after everything was over. The romantic mood that night set the two lovers in motion, and they had the most romantic kiss to blend the moment, and no one could tell what that led to. Heeju and Hong In-ae confronted Chairman Hong, probing him about why he covered up the accident. Then, we saw the scene where Chairman Hong was about to kill Chairman Paik Jong-ho. Chairman Paik had killed his own grandson and Chairman Hong's son, claiming their deaths were losses and asserting it would be a loss to Chairman Hong if he killed him after investing $10 million in his presidential campaign. As tensions rose, Chairman Hong drove to where the memorial for Chairman Paik was being held. He picked up his gun and headed into the room, aiming it at Chairman Paik's son, demanding that he reveal where the real Saeon was, as he couldn't allow him to be alive. In the midst of their confrontation, a fire broke out in the adjacent room. Meanwhile, Saeon's mother saw the real Saeon when they arrived at the building. Fake Saeon rushed into the scene, and upon noticing the fire, he sprinted in search of Heeju. While searching for her, he received a call from the real Saeon using an unknown number. The real Saeon informed him that Heeju was with him and threatened to kill her, wanting Saeon to endure the real pain of losing someone precious, just as he had suffered. Fake Saeon saw their location on his phone and promised to come for her. However, Heeju asked him not to since she was going to protect him this time. With determination, she drove recklessly at high speeds, knowing it would destabilize the real Saeon. She intentionally caused an accident, and their car crashed into the river, leaving them both nowhere to be found. In a heartfelt press conference, spokesperson Saeon openly confessed that he wasn't Chairman Paik Ui-yong's son and that his real name wasn't Paik Saeon. The only truth he could share about himself was that he was married and had a wife, the one who had been kidnapped by the man threatening to kill him. He even displayed his wife's picture and name, urging the public to report if they found her. 3 years ago, on the night of the wedding day, spokesperson Saeon and Heeju returned home. Right from the start, Saeon began laying down strange rules. First, he declared that he would not enter Heeju's room for any reason, and so she must not enter his as well. Secondly, she didn't have to prepare meals for him or wait for him to return from work. Despite these rules, he loved Heeju and felt happy to be married to her. Now, reflecting on the future, he regretted not dedicating his love and commitment to Heeju. He couldn't find her after the accident. All they could discover was one of her shoes. As for Heeju's family, everyone came to the accident scene except Saeon's mother, which looked suspicious. Saeon decided to check her dashcam footage, but found that no recordings had been made. He reported this to the police and requested they recover the footage and find out where she was during the accident. Just then, he found her on her way. Saeon asked her why she hadn't been crying and didn't bother to come to the scene to check if her real son was alive or dead. In response, she said she had been crying for over 20 years when she was told that her son fell into the water and drowned while they were fishing. Even after a thorough search, they couldn't find him, leaving her to struggle in agony as to whether her child was alive or not. With all confidence, she told Sion that it was his turn to feel such pain. Chairman Park Woo-young played his tricks again. He organized a press conference to twist the story to his advantage like he always does. He began by saying that 24 years ago, his father went with his son to the lake to fish but didn't return with him. When they couldn't find his body, it was not easy for them to accept their child's death, so they couldn't register his death. Then, one day, at the fishing spot his son used to visit, they met a child who had grown up there without parents or even a name, and he was Saeon, who was with them now. The HBC journalist asked why their biological son didn't look for his parents, and why he was seeking revenge against the spokesperson, Park Saeon. Chairman Park Woo-young denied this and said his son was not in his sound state of mind since the lake accident. HBC journalist revealed that his son's voice and phone conversation were recorded. He further exposed a recording from the suspect's accomplice, Mr. Park. Mr. Park, in his statement, revealed that he met real Saeon on the day he came to the presidential office. He has so much animosity against Saeon. He insisted he wanted to see Saeon and tried to barge in without permission, claiming he would kill him. Mr. Park decided to make use of his hatred and followed him for a few days, and he saw him head to the mansion where the orphaned children and his brother went missing. Since then, they have been working together after he had lied that he grew up at the fishing spot and Park Jung-ho always brought the dead bodies his grandson killed to the owner of the fishing spot, and because he saw his grandson's face, he tried to drown him, and since then, he's been living in an impaired state. Things became complicated, and just then, the police came in and arrested Seon's mother for a murder case. She was confident she would overcome this accusation, but she was swayed away when the video of when she murdered Chairman Park Jang-ho. She wondered how they got this video, and then spokesperson Saeon entered and unmasked the mystery behind this. He showed her Chairman Park's signet ring, which he gave him before passing away. A few days later, he returned it to him, saying it wasn't right for him to take it then. There was a camera on the ring that made a recording of how she strangled Chairman Park Jang-ho with a pillow, after she figured out that spokesperson Saeon was his own real son, which he brought in place of her own son. Hearing that, Saeon's mum confessed that she asked her man, Mr. Min, to kidnap Hee-ju after taking her son. Her plan was to keep Hee-ju for many years, and after that, release her so Saeon would regret and mourn the days they couldn't be together, just like her and her son. Luckily, the police located Hee-ju, but Saeon's mother had informed Mr. Min to take care of things if anything happened to her. Mr. Min that night, however, freed Hee-ju and asked her to run away. He, however, locked real Saeon in the room where he used to be as a child. On that spot, Chairman Park came in and asked him to open the door. Unknown to him, he saw him exchange glances with his wife and so followed him. When he opened the door, Chairman Park struggled his gun with his biological son. He took the upper hand and shot his father. Hee-ju, who fainted while running away, woke up to the sound of the gunshot. However, the miserable Saeon was out for her. Hee-ju ran as much as she could until she encountered spokesperson Saeon, who was also out looking for her. They hugged, entered the car, and were heading home. Unfortunately, it wasn't over yet. That miserable culprit got in their way again, and it seemed impossible for them to escape. Saeon alighted from the car and moved close to him. He claimed he was going to kill him because he was the son of Chairman Park Jang-ho, who was full of sins. He whispered something to his hearing, and that made Saeon cry so much, staring at Hee-ju, who was in the car behind him. The next morning, Hee-ju woke from a vivid nightmare where she saw the culprit shoot spokesperson Saeon. She cried like a baby, only to suddenly wake up in her room, realizing it was all just a dream. Desperately wanting to see the man she loved, she found he was nowhere to be found. However, it was announced that he would donate all the assets he inherited from the late Chairman Park Jang-ho to society. The presidential office also accepted his resignation, leaving all his co-workers in a somber mood. Sang-woo and Yuri continued to visit the orphanage and spent time with the children there. Unfortunately, in a tragic turn of events, the real Saeon was shot dead at the scene by the police, despite how much his mother had tried to protect him this time. Chairman Park Woo-young apologized to the public for his family's mistakes, blaming his late father for all that had happened. He promised that a new version of himself would be reborn. However, after the election, Park Woo-young came in third with only 3.4% of the votes. In the end, the Park family never managed to produce a president, and Saeon's mother was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her father-in-law. In utter despair and filled with guilt, she appealed for the maximum sentence. the death penalty. Mr. Min, who had been loyal to the Pike family his entire life, acknowledged his crimes and showed deep remorse. Considering that the victims did not wish to punish him, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Just like that, the Pike family's scandal, which had caused such an uproar, came to an end. Sadly, Heeju was left alone in the world, longing for spokesperson Saeyeon, who had disappeared, letting go of everything he had. 6 months passed since Saeyeon's disappearance. Fortunately, thanks to him, Heeju's father got well again and spent time with his daughter. Still, the memories of Saeyeon never once left her heart. Hong In-ah urged Heeju to come stay with her, or suggested they go on a trip together. But Heeju insisted on staying in her home, believing he would return. She remembered he was right next to her while she was in the hospital and was always there, even when he slept in exhaustion for days. Hong In-ah insisted that Saeyeon was not coming back and advised Heeju to forget him. However, Heeju couldn't bring herself to get over him. She felt she might not be able to live much longer without Saeyeon. She wouldn't stop calling for him and waiting up for him all night long. Strangely, Heeju began to receive calls and letters from Argan, expressing appreciation for her donations. She reached out to the HBC journalist, who had once worked as a war correspondent in Argan alongside Saeyeon. When she requested information on the places he knew in Argan, he hesitated, stating that Argan was a war zone and she might die if she went there. But Heeju insisted she would rather face danger than stay behind, missing him so desperately. Sensing her determination, he finally relented and shared the information she sought, and Heeju immediately traveled to Argan. Saeyeon was obsessed with Argan because of its sunset spot. Upon her arrival, she visited the school where her name had been used to make donations and tried to inquire if it was by any chance that Saeyeon had made those donations in her name, showing the director of the school his picture. The director explained they had never received donations in person. When she asked about the sunset spot, the director warned her that it wasn't secure at the moment and that she might get killed. But when it came to Saeyeon, Heeju was stubborn and wouldn't listen. Determined, she went to the spot and ended up getting captured. A masked figure unexpectedly came to free the captives, but when it was Heeju's turn, he hesitated, took her into a car, and drove away. The soldiers pursued the vehicle, shooting at them as they sped off. Saeyeon then branched into a forest, freeing her and revealing his identity. Shockingly, it was her usual savior, spokesperson Saeyeon. He was mad at her for coming to such an insecure zone just for him. Saeyeon was surprised when she ranted about how she couldn't live without him. She then asked what the real Saeyeon had whispered to him that night he was shot. He disclosed that his father, Chairman Pike Jang-ho, was the one who put up a hit and ran them over with a truck in the car accident because her little brother saw real Saeyeon's face, which he was trying to hide from the world. Guilt, however, gripped him, and he decided to punish himself for it until he could forgive himself. However, Heeju couldn't hold back any longer. She pulled Saeyeon to herself and gave him a passionate kiss in the middle of the forest they were. In no time, they made their way to the bed and made love that would remain in their memory for a long time. Spokesperson Saeyeon team member Mr. Kang, the HBC journalist, Yu-ri, and Sang-woo visited the newly wedded couple. Mr. Kang was so overwhelmed and nervous seeing his most cherished boss after a long time. They had a love feast with the couple. The food tasted really delicious and they were surprised when Heeju mentioned that Saeyeon cooked the food. Saeyeon had changed his name to Pike Yo-yeon, which means one and only love in the world. Mr. Kang was impressed about Saeyeon's way of loving his wife, and he called him the most romantic husband in the world. Heeju was radiating with love, and anyone could see on her face. At that moment, Sang-woo also broke the news that he would be getting married to Yu-ri soon, and that brightened everyone's mood and made the atmosphere more lively. After they left, the couple continued their lovey-dovey act, and Heeju told him she would start work at the broadcasting station again the following week to be a sign interpreter again because she loved the job. Next, Saeyeon visited Mr. Jong, the fisherman, again, and he prepared him fish. Meanwhile, Saeyeon never ate fish since the incident at the fishing spot. Heeju also reconciled with her mother and Chairman Hong, and they were happy for her. They wished them a long and happy life. Hong In-ah, too, apologized for making her suffer for so long because of her as a perpetrator and bystander. In response, Heeju assured her she had forgotten the past, and she should forget the past, too. Just as she said, Heeju resumed work as a sign interpreter in the broadcasting station with Yu-ri. Se-eon also resolved to become a negotiator for his country, and Mr. Park also joined him as his personal assistant. Negotiator Se-eon teased Hee-ju, saying that he missed the version of her that called with 406, missing the chilly tone in her voice when she threatened him. She never held back from him, and he wanted her to be just like that, to ask him anything she wanted and call anytime she wanted, as he would pick up as if it was her first call. The couple lived the life they had ever wanted thereafter. If you enjoyed this recap, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and see you next time.